There's no question. What we talked about last week was that earnings were going to drive the conversation this week, and that's exactly what has happened. It started off early in the week with a little bit of concern about the banks, but ended with a really good report with a number of the tech companies. Jason, let's start really with the First Republic story.
So First Republic, a little bit of background to the listeners. They effectively had some of the global systemically important banks backstop deposits, inject $30 billion when banking contagion started in the first quarter. Now, what we learned during the earnings release was that $30 billion, effectively 60% of deposits left the bank. So questions immediately popped up with respect to, is this a going concern? Will they need to be backstopped by the FDIC? And that really drove weakness to start the week off. But as we turned to tech earnings, we saw companies like Microsoft and Meta really blow out expectations. And a lot of that came from the cloud. And you try to count the number of mentions for artificial intelligence on these conference calls, and that's really the crux of what the analysts are interested in.
Yeah, that's exactly right. For example, Microsoft, we've all heard about this conversation about ChatGPT, and people go, how do I participate in that? Well, Microsoft was a big play, and it's rallied now over $300 a share, but they're involved with ChatGPT.
Yeah, they have a relationship with OpenAI, who is the company that's responsible for the generative AI ChatGPT, and it's a nice symbiotic relationship where not only do they get to leverage their technology for their own software like their search engine Bing, but these AI companies need the computing power to run immense workloads. And what we're seeing is OpenAI, with this relationship, they're putting all that workload on Microsoft's Azure cloud. And that's a real benefit for them, especially as they're able to leverage relationships with new customers. For example, they mentioned Mercedes-Benz. They mentioned Shell. This is an invention or innovation that will impact all segments of the economy.
Did you see that OpenAI costs $700,000 a day to run?
But what's nice, I talked to so many people who are using it. I talked to a guy yesterday, a friend of mine who is in the storage business, and he said it's certainly better than starting with a blank piece of paper.
Sure.
So he puts in it, he gets a framework, but you're going to have to certainly put the red pen to it and make sure it didn't make some things up. So there's no question that's going to evolve over time, but it certainly is going to be a story. But what we're seeing for sure, Jason, is, there was people just running towards what was called TINA. There is no alternative. And of course, we've talked about this for nearly a year now. It's moved from TINA to her sister Terra. There is now a reasonable alternative to just buying stocks.
Yeah, and that reasonable alternative is fixed income, money market mutual funds. You look at the short end of the yield curve, and with the expectation that the Fed increases the federal funds rate next week, we're looking at almost a 5-handle there.
Yeah, that is right. And of course, that is what we expect from the Federal Reserve next week is a quarter-point raise. And we certainly have been talking about it. At some point, where are we in the rate hiking cycle? We believe that we may be at the peak after May. We're going to have to listen to this report, but more of a dovish report out of the Federal Reserve after they make that announcement. Because right now, the rates that the Federal Reserve has on the short term are above market rates, and that is generally a sign that they are done raising rates. So, the most anticipated recession of all time may not happen. We'll have to actually see what is going to come out of that. But recessions in rough waters ahead certainly are in front of us. So let's go ahead and take a look at a number of these earnings as they come out over the next couple of weeks and make sure that you're positioned correctly.